God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Finley's Friendly Appliances. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the pilot episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter. My name is Tom Catt, and I'm joined by my co-star, the Toni Homeperm.
Hello, everyone.
We just finished watching not the pilot episode of Maude, but we finished watching Maude's introductory episode of All in the Family. To those unaware, Maude was a spin-off of All in the Family. Norman Lear approached Bea Arthur of being a guest on the show, and from there, I think it was CBS at the time, or the NBC.
Yes, CBS.
I think it was CBS producers said, we have to get that girl her own show.
Absolutely.
And one of the reasons why we decided to do this was because Maude isn't very well known in syndication.
No.
And from what I've noticed, Maude never seems to do well in syndication.
No.
And
the funny thing is, I mean, everybody really knows Bea Arthur.
Everyone knows Bea Arthur from Golden Girls. Yes.
And they talk about, all the issues that the Golden Girls explored. Yeah, Maude explored pretty much all of those same issues.
And then some.
Prior to the Golden
Girls. And I think that's one of the reasons why. And even when, so to those unaware, I am a Bea Arthur impersonator.
No.
And one of the things that I've been doing is I've been doing a little thing called Maude Live, where it would be me and a small little cast where we would read certain episodes. And one of the things that I've noticed is that people will comment saying, "Oh, I wasn't allowed to watch Maude.
Yes,
it was not appropriate for us to watch that." And I'm like, "Well, why?" And then, of course, rewatching Maude, I'm like, "She's a very opinionated woman." Norman Lear, not even Norman Lear, but the writers of the show wrote Maude to be a very, very militant, aggressive feminist during a time when that wasn't really the norm.
No,
like so many people were used to. Oh God! Why?
Donna Reed,
Mrs.
Brady.
Thank you, Mrs. Brady.
All those.
We'll leave it to be June Cleaver.
Yes. And Maude broke that.
Maude broke the mold.
Yes.
Maude broke the mold. And it was just. It's always so fascinating to see an evolution because, in true to form fashion, I've watched all of Maude, but I haven't really watched All in the Family except for a few episodes here and there.
Right.
And when I would watch the All in the Family episodes, it was so nice to see Archie get put in his place.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And especially by someone who was not only taller than him, but I think louder than him, too.
She really could give him what for.
Yeah. And it's fascinating rewatching the introductory episode, and just seeing the interaction between Edith and it's so unfortunate because as soon as Maude started, there was nary a mention of the bunkers.
Of the bunkers,
there was never a mention of the bunkers after that. And I don't know if that was the thing that they did for sitcoms in the 70s, because they even did the same thing with Good Times and the Jeffersons.
Right, because Good Times was a spin-off of Maude. Spun off of Maude.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you really didn't see...
They even changed the names. Florida... When it came to Good Times, Florida remained Florida.
Yes.
Esther Roll continued playing Florida.
Yes.
But Henry Evans became James Evans.
Right.
And they didn't live in New York. They lived in the slums of Chicago.
Right.
And it's just fascinating to see what the creators and the producers said would work. But that we can certainly discuss. We can certainly discuss Good Times later on because that is definitely a point of interest when it comes to Maude.
But we digress. But you bring up a good point because in the All in the Family episode, Archie was saying how Maude had two husbands that died.
Yeah.
But in the show,
in Maude, she had three ex-husbands and then her present husband Walter.
And didn't they say that she had divorced all of them?
Oh my God! Now I'm trying to process all that. In Maude, she had four husbands. There was Barney, Chester, Albert, and Walter.
And those were not the names of
Those
the
were
husbands
not
that
the
they
names
spoke
of the
All in the
husbands.
Family.
Yeah, those were not the names that were used in this episode of All in the Family. I think it was Fred died of a brain hemorrhage and Bert died of a seizure, of a heart seizure,
Right.
or
something like
something
that.
to that effect.
Yes.
But it's interesting to see that. But later we do actually get to meet one of Maude's ex-husbands, and it's not somebody that was mentioned in the episode.
Of course not. I don't even remember that one. you know, it's funny because I did watch the Maude episodes, some of them, when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. When I was at my grandmother's, I was not allowed to watch them like at home with my parents. But that was like
something else.
That was considered like too controversial.
Too controversial.
My grandmother she wanted to watch it and she didn't care. I was there, so.
I mean, when I met Bea Arthur, when I say met Bea Arthur, I literally met her in passing. Excuse me. I had told my mother that story, and my mother says, "You met Maude," because I was thinking my mother grew up during the 70s, and she was an adult woman in the 80s. And I was immediately expecting her to say, "You met Dorothy." Mm-hmm. But instead of saying, "You met Dorothy," "You met Maude." So that leads me to believe that my mother was able to watch Maude. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where I'm like, I wish that Maude was able to do better. I do. I wish that Maude was able to do better in syndication.
And I'm quite depressed now because I realize that your mother and I are the same age. I'm sorry. That's it. The show has ended.
Welcome. It's the last episode, everybody. First last episode. No, but it's one of those things where first let's go over the premise of the first episode. I believe it's called Cousin Maude.
Cousin Maude. Yes,
Cousin Maude's visit.
That's what we're going with.
That's the first episode. The first episode is Cousin Maude's visit, and in it, the bunkers, with the exception of Edith, are all sick.
All sick.
Michael,
Archie,
and Gloria are all sick with some variant of the flu.
And they're running Edith ragged.
They're running Edith up and down the stairs, making her an absolute... just driving Edith crazy. But of course you would never see that because Edith was always, very doting and very submissive. Archie! All that fun stuff. And Edith calls for Maude to come and help. And Archie is rallying against Maude coming and helping.
And he sent a telegram telling her not to come.
He sent a telegram telling her not to come.
Back when people still
sent telegrams.
I don't know if anyone.
No one sends telegrams anymore.
I don't think so.
I don't know of many people that still send telegrams. I know that there were the singing telegram. Cameo is actually Cameo. Cameo is a great example of a telegram, but from a celebrity.
Yes, exactly.
I'd like to be on Cameo at some point, but that's besides the point.
But we digress.
Again.
There'll be a lot of digressing.
A lot of tangential stuff.
There's going to be a lot of digressing
stuff. So Maude, going against Archie's wishes, comes and helps.
Yes.
And it's just you see the blood rush from Archie's face as soon as he sees Maude when he opens the door. And
it takes forever for her to get there.
Well, there's a lot of exposition.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the beginning.
There's a lot of exposition, and then it just sort of blows up.
Yes.
Because there were a lot of issues of the day addressed in this one episode. Now, All in the Family has always been a show that was very family friendly, very of the time, very period. It's a very period show.
Yes.
I think when it comes to the 70s, you sort of have to be a period show. Norman Lear was a genius.
Well, it was a contemporary show.
It was very contemporary.
Much more so than what we were saying before about those, other mothers
absolutely.
June Cleaver and
even
Mrs.
Mary
Brady.
Tyler Moore.
Yeah, I mean, All in the Family presented a much more realistic version of how people were actually living at the time.
Yes. And to sort of see Maude interact with not only Archie but other members of the family. Like, she was very warm, and she would cozy up to Michael and Gloria, and would made them delicious food.
She made them custard.
She made them custard, for goodness sake.
And she made Edith a delicious breakfast
Made
with eggs,
delicious,
bacon,
yes.
potatoes, and Archie got
cream of wheat with cheese.
because it was binding.
Because it was light, but it binds.
It binds.
And it's hearing jokes like that, especially in a day and age when like there's so much medication. It was just hysterical. It's just hysterical to see that sort of change and shift.
Because All in the Family was probably the very first American TV show where you actually ever heard the toilet flush.
Right?
Up until then,
there was no toilet humor.
There was bodily functions did not exist.
Not in the slightest.
Sitcoms.
Not at all.
They didn't exist.
So it's very fascinating to just see the change and the shift in sitcoms from All in the Family to Maude to Golden Girls and 221 and then Living Single and just seeing the shift in sitcoms and just it's interesting to say the least. So naturally the episode continues with Maude taking care of the family, and then Maude sits in Archie's chair.
And that was always a big no-no.
That was always a big no-no. And even if you pay attention to the episode, you can hear the audience go, uh-oh, oh no. Like you would hear the groan in the audience.
You don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't sit in Archie Bunker's chair.
You don't sit in Archie Bunker's chair. And for someone that Archie does not like, that also was like another level.
Yes, another level.
And
definitely.
It just... the dialogue between the two of them was so good. It was so good. Like Archie comes downstairs, saying, "You're in my chair. And what are you going to do about it?" And just, it was, honest to goodness, watching All in the Family and just seeing Carol O'Connor's, I think he won it. Did he win an Emmy for?
Oh, multiple.
I think
Emmys,
he won
I'm
several
sure.
Emmys for Archie Bunker. And the things that he says and the things that they said back then, just hysterical and also incredibly problematic.
Yes. But the thing is, now, having, lived, being alive at that time, you are not.
I was not alive at the time.
You were not even alive.
I was not even a thought at the time.
And I remember watching that show. Of course, I was barely a fetus. But I remember. I was watching it from the fetal position. But my parents and my grandparents, they loved that show, and they loved Archie Bunker so much because he was saying things
that they said.
That they said. Not my mother. My mother was she was more on the Mike side. Definitely more of a Michael. But my father, he was definitely an Archie Bunker, and the things that he said were the things that...
I mean, one of the things one of the reasons why we decided to do the show is just to address these sort of issues that were brought up during these sitcoms during the 70s, and how we're still having the same conversations. I remember even once when I posted on TikTok, I had done lip syncs where I was Maude,
right,
and I was lip syncing and reacting to Archie's dialogue, and some of the comments were like, Archie was right all along, Archie was this, Archie was that, Maude was such a just really, really, really brutal names about Maude's character, and I'm like, where am I? Where are we still in the 70s? Are we still like in this era? I thought it died. I thought it went away. No.
And what really just grabbed me, because we just watched the episode, so we're reliving it now.
We're reliving the episode now fresh.
Where Archie, in order to get Maude out of the chair, he brings up Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who Maude adored, and Archie couldn't stand.
Could not stand.
And Archie starts spewing these things, sort of revising history. And I'm like, why does that sort of remind me of a lot of people we have seen, currently.
Yeah.
Like, actual events.
There was a meme that was going around saying it was a picture of Carol O'Connor as Archie Bunker and said, "You loved me during the 70s and then you elected me president."
Right.
And in true to form fashion, like every time I watch All in the Family now, all I can see is him. Mm-hmm. All I can see is him. We're not mentioning his name.
We're not mentioning the name.
We're not mentioning.
However, in Archie's defense, over the course of the show,
there's growth.
He did grow.
There is a character arc there.
Yeah, but there were quite a few instances.
There were a few moments where I'm like, "Oh wow, this is actually a thing that's happening." He said those words, didn't he? Yes, he did. Yeah. Yes, he did.
So he actually uses one racist term.
Oh yeah,
in this episode.
There was the one term that he used in this episode, but there was another episode where he did in fact use
the N-word.
The N-word.
I don't remember that one.
It was I don't know if it was in, because All in the Family had a series of spin-offs. All in the Family had Maude, All in the Family had the Jeffersons, All in the Family had Archie's Place.
Yes.
And I think it was in Archie's Place that he had said the word.
Uh-huh.
And I'm almost positive. I have to ask a friend of mine who we were supposed to do something like Maude Live, where would be a small cast of people, and we would recite and just do a live read of that staged reading of that episode of Maude. And I'm pretty sure it was an episode of Archie's Place. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong. Check with us. Yes. Check with us.
Let us know.
Let us know in the comments. Let us know.
Will there be comments?
I don't know if there will be comments, but let us know anyway.
Please comment.
But yeah, it's fascinating what they were able to allow him to get away with.
Yeah.
And then I watch Maude, and like one of the things that you were never allowed to swear. You were never, ever allowed to swear on national television. No. And I think like Archie was saying hell and damn, but you were not allowed to say ass.
Right.
You had to use patootie.
Right.
You were never allowed to say sex. You had to say whoopee.
Right.
And if you wanted to say it, you'd have to spell it out.
Yes.
And that's just look at where we've come. And you look at shows like Two Broke Girls and Big Bang Theory, and just the dialogue. It's all of the naughty.
It's funny you bring up the cursing, because I remember specifically on All in the Family. Mm-hmm. There was one time where Archie was like he was fighting with Edith, and he was had the phone, and Edith screaming at him, put the phone down, and finally she goes, put the phone down, damn it! And it's like
it was one of those moments in time where you're like
everything, the audience and Archie, they're all like are stunned.
Oh God!
And like Archie's, and he calls Edith out for cursing, and she's like embarrassed, but it was like
it's very. You would never expect a character like Edith to do anything wrong, or do anything bad. So that was again one of the reasons why I believe there was an episode where she was assaulted, where she was
assaulted. I remember that,
and that was a very powerful episode.
Yeah,
because you have this sort of pillar of good faith and positivity. Just be put in that sort of situation. It was,
and also there was an episode where Gloria.
There was also an episode where Gloria was sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
And
you didn't see stuff like that in a sitcom.
You did not see stuff like that in a sitcom at all back then. So, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was addressed. He
was Maude's trigger.
He was Maude's, supposedly Maude's trigger. And,
of course, this was proto-Maude.
I think it was proto-Maude.
This was proto. I think we could describe her as proto-Maude. She was not fully, completely
She
formed.
wasn't a fully realized, fleshed out character yet. She was just this sort of foil to Archie.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the reasons why. So, prior to All in the Family, Maude was doing not a one-woman show.
Bea Arthur.
Bea Arthur. That's where I'm at. Bea Arthur was doing a review called The Shoestring Review on Broadway. And Norman Lear, I think, was a friend of hers at the time and saw her in the show. And then Norman was, I guess, so wowed by her performance.
How could he not be?
I love the song that she sings in the Shoestring.
What is she singing that?
Garbage.
I don't know that.
The last line is, "If I am garbage, then take me away."
Uh-huh.
It is a fabulously funny song. I absolutely love it.
Is it on YouTube?
You can find it on YouTube,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. It's absolutely hysterical. I'll see if I can send it to you, because I also found it on Amazon Music.
Mm-hmm.
But Norman was just so, I guess, wowed by her performance that he said, "Listen, I want you to come out, read for a part, see if you like it." And Bea Arthur was terrified of flying. I did not know that.
Oh.
She was terrified of flying.
Huh.
And she flew out and read for the part, and Norman wrote the part for her. And that the rest is history. Like the CBS execs were like, again, we need to get that girl her own show. Mm-hmm. So they did an actual pilot episode, which will be next week's episode.
Well, no, there was a second.
Yeah, there was a second one.
Episode
there were
of
two
her on
episodes.
All in the Family.
Yeah, there were two episodes of All in the Family.
And then there was the pilot.
Then there was the pilot.
Yes.
Yep. We know what we're doing. We're professionals. No, there was Cousin Maude's visit.
Right.
And then there was Maude. Then there was just the episode of Maude.
The episode of Maude.
Yeah. And then
there was
the pilot for Maude that was produced, I think, later. Was produced in the following season. Because that's how sitcoms work, where it's like you have the idea, you get the produce. It takes longer than a year sometimes to get a sitcom off the ground.
I've been waiting decades for mine.
So it's fascinating to have the sort of conversations that were being had. As to get back to the episode, Maude and Archie end up getting into a battle of words over
Civil rights.
Franklin
Delano Roosevelt. General MacArthur.
General MacArthur.
Gibraltar and Yalta.
And Yalta and Gibraltar. Now I barely passed American history, so I'm not that I guess we could say knowledgeable, but you actually lived through that.
No, I didn't go that far back. We'd have to call some other drag queens.
Call some other drag friends of ours.
Yes, for information about that.
So it's always fascinating to see people have sort of like of the time conversations, because even with the Golden Girls, I'm part of so many Golden Girls groups on Facebook, and every time someone's like, "Well, I heard this on an episode and I don't understand what happened," like whether it was about the AIDS epidemic or just certain jokes and whatnot that people didn't get, like the rabbit died laughing. Mm-hmm. Do you know the story about the rabbit dying?
Yeah.
They would used to take the urine samples and inject it into the rabbit.
Yes, that used to be the thing. Instead of saying, "Oh, someone's pregnant," it's like, "Oh, the rabbit died."
The rabbit died, exactly.
That was an expression, and it meant you were pregnant.
Exactly. And
I never thought about it. I guess young people today
don't hear jokes like that.
If they hear that expression, they're gonna be like, "What does that mean?
What does that mean? I'm confused. I'm confusion." And then also hearing other jokes like, oh God, I can't think of any other jokes from the Golden Girls. This is a moment in history, friends.
But of course, there was things about the Cold War. That today it's like young people don't have a
young people don't have a frame of reference for that. So when they watch these older sitcoms, and this is about me. I'm atting myself when I say this, but there are times when I'm watching an older sitcom and I'm like, well, I don't understand that. Mm. So you do the human thing and you look it up.
You research it.
You do your research and you figure out what the hell these people are talking about.
Right.
And even today, there's still very much civil unrest. There's still very much there's so much going on in terms of civil rights and equality, and you have the Black Lives Matter movement. You have the Asian AAPI. Oh, why can I? It's not an anagram. Oh, for pity's sake. AAPI, which is Asian American Pacific Islander, or something to that effect. You have that movement now happening. There's still the LGBTQ movement,
right?
And one of the lines that Archie says is, Richard E. Nixon knew how to keep his wife at home. She was always out in the streets running around with he used the term colors, which obviously is a very inappropriate term.
Absolutely.
And
don't read us.
Don't read us. That's a line of dialogue.
Quoting what the character said to point out how wrong it is.
Exactly. And he proceeds to say, we didn't know they were there. And it was it was one of those moments where I'm like,
they didn't know those people were there. How
do you not? How do you not? Especially where did All in the Family take place?
Queens.
It was in Queens.
They were in Queens. I think they were supposed to be in Forest Hills.
Sounds about right.
I think they were in Forest Hills.
That sounds about right. That tracks.
Yeah.
We'd have to do our research.
We'd have to do our own research.
But
we're part. Usually we're drag queens. So we don't research. We work. We work on the fly.
That's it. We work on the fly. Is right. Everything is improv. Everything is improv.
It's like the girl who's going on. She's having a wig malfunction. You're on next, and it's like okay.
Yep. I guess I'm on. I guess I'm going on with or without a wig.
Yeah.
So it really is one of those things where you're seeing people continuing to have the conversations that were had such and such many years ago.
Yeah.
And
isn't it just sort of unbelievable that some things just haven't changed?
All in the Family was 72?
74?
No, I think it started in 70.
Yeah, I mean it was early 70s.
It was very early 70s because I know Maude was 72 to 78. 72 to 78. And I'm pretty sure All in the Family was like 71.
Right, yeah.
To whenever the heck it ended. It lasted like 8 or 9 seasons.
And then became Archie Bunker's Place. And went, I don't know how long. I mean, it was on.
I think Archie's Place lasted about 3-4 seasons. I think, maybe.
It could have been more. I don't know. I know it was just on forever.
Yeah.
It was just on forever.
They just wanted to give Carol O'Connor all the money.
And it's funny how actors today, they don't want to be tied to one character.
They don't want to be typecast
too long. And Carol O'Connor didn't care.
He rode that character until he couldn't ride it no more.
Exactly. Although then he did go on to do that. What was it, In the Heat of the Night show where he played the sheriff?
Where he played the sheriff, right?
Yeah, I remember that.
But you know something? He was always Carol O'Connor was always very good about playing a certain type of character.
Yeah.
And, I want to say that he was probably like one of the last few people that rode the character until you have your Mae Wests, you have your John Waynes,
right.
You have your Joan Crawfords, you have your Betty Davises, where you would play these sort of characters that you grew up playing in Hollywood. And even Bea Arthur was the same, where she would play this sort of strong, imposing, domineering female character. And it's just fascinating how today you won't see actors. No. You'll see actors definitely stretching out their wings a little bit.
Yeah.
And I love that personally. Yeah. As a character actor, I love being able to play different characters.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, even with my drag.
Even with your drag, you play different characters.
I play different characters because I get bored.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can understand that. But Carol O'Connor, as far as playing Archie Bunker...
He enjoyed playing those type of characters. And it worked for him because he was able to play it.
And he made a lot of money.
Yes, he did.
Doing it. He was probably one of the highest...
He's still making money. He's been dead for how many years?
My God, yeah, the estate,
I think he died in what, 2000?
Something like that.
I think he died in 2000.
Something like that, yeah.
Because I remember, it had to have been 2000, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just continuing to see the sort of evolution of actors and character actors and sitcoms. It's just fascinating to me. But again, we're still having these same conversations.
Yeah, the same
and that
issues.
That was one of the reasons why Toni and myself decided to pretty much start this conversation, because if you watch older episodes of Maude, like, you'll see things that we'll obviously be addressing later on, but there were issues of abortion. Obviously, that's the one episode that sticks out in a lot of people's minds, and I think that's one of the reasons why it doesn't do so well in syndication. But that's besides the point.
Right.
You'll see what the hell is it called? Premarital relations, premarital sex,
homosexuality.
You will see homosexuality.
That was the first show that I, as a young child saw, and I can't wait till we actually get to that episode. But just to touch on it briefly, where they dealt with homosexuality, and I was like, yeah, that's me. That's me.
No, it's true.
Because the thing is, like, I envy young kids and young people today because there's so much more representation of the LGBTQ population than when I was a kid. And
I mean, when not to age you. But,
please don't age me any more than I already have.
But when you were younger, there was only so many ways to represent a queer identifying individual. But the thing is, queer people have existed for years, and we'll obviously be addressing more on that later on
when we get to that.
When we get to that episode, but to focus squarely on this one episode, and you're seeing Edith run around ragged. You're seeing Archie be Archie. Like, there were times that Toni was laughing, and I'm just rolling my eyes because I'm like, oh, Archie. Why?
Well, he was sexist. He was bigoted.
He was sexist, racist, homophobic.
I mean,
xenophobic.
Every phobic.
He was.
Yeah, and yet the American audience loved him. Loved him. So,
because I think one of the beautiful things that I love about Norman Lear is that he'll take these characters and he'll make them do awful things, but he'll still make them likable.
Yeah.
And, even there are certain episodes of Maude, there are certain episodes of not All in the Family. Well, yeah, All in the Family. Mm-hmm. Like, Norman Lear I say this, Chuck Lorre is the Norman Lear of today. Mm-hmm. Because Chuck Lorre has so many sitcoms. Mm-hmm. So many sitcoms under his belt. And Norman Lear had a lot of sitcoms under his belt.
Yeah, he changed the face of American television.
Yes, he did. He very much did. And God bless him, he's still alive today.
Oh, is he?
Yes, he is.
I didn't know that.
Norman Lear, I'm pretty sure he's either 99.
Wow.
Yeah, him, Rob Reiner, Betty White. Who else is somebody that's up there? Mel Brooks is still kicking. Mm-hmm. Just all these marvelous actors and directors and producers that we've known for years, still kicking, and still. I even think that Mel Brooks is producing. I could be wrong in saying this, but I think he's also producing a History of the World Part 1 musical.
Really? That wouldn't surprise me.
I think
I remember hearing something about that.
And then, there's also the possibility that he'll be retiring. So, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It's funny, though, talking about all the things about Archie, racist, homophobic, xenophobic. Not only did he use that term about, African Americans, but even to Mike, he used a term about him being Polish. Yeah. A term that,
that is very much frowned upon in society.
Yes, and I mean, and he said these things, and, people just, the audience laughed. They were rolling in the aisles. And
it's really something, because I've had a number of conversations with friends of mine where we'll have the conversation and, like, can we please stop using the excuse it was made what the heck is the phrase? It's a certain phrase where it was a product of its time.
Of its time, yeah.
A product of its time. And, you know, I don't like... That is such a very difficult thing as a white queer person to, I guess, grapple
with.
Because
you're queer?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Who knew?
Get me out of here!
I do love that joke. I love that joke so much. But as two white queer individuals,
yes.
It's very challenging to sort of have that discussion because we have not lived that life.
Nope.
So we can only speak on it from what we've seen, and that's the story on that.
Yes.
I would love for us to have that conversation with somebody down the line at some point. Maybe we can get LaBelle on the show at one point.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we could certainly address that with her.
Yeah.
And I just feel like when it came to sitcoms, especially during the 70s, there were a lot of things that were addressed.
Oh, yeah.
There were a lot of things that were addressed from 70 to right up until like 80, 81, 82. And, you know, even during the 80s, there were the 80s, like every single era since the 70s, there have sort of been more focus on issues affecting different communities. And I'm very excited to see a continuation of that. I want to see a continuation of having focus be put on these issues affecting different communities.
No, it's funny because there was something that happened recently. I was talking with someone, and we were saying how a lot of the stuff that I do is like we have like you know, spoof character things and all that, and somebody said, oh, it would be great if you could have like Ms. Swan from Mad TV, and I was like, oh my God, I hadn't thought about that character in like so long. It was so funny when watching it at the time, but I'm like, wow, that character would be so wrong to do in today's climate. You know,
correct.
You know, making fun of
like
an Asian
but
person.
also during in
and the character's not from that long ago.
The character's not that long ago. There was also another character that I was watching, and the character's name was Jewel Baroni from Mad TV, created by Mary Shearer, and the character was a smoker, but she sounded like this. And obviously very like Italian, older woman, like crazy bouffant hair.
She sounded like Big Ange.
She sounded exactly like Big Ange, and it was just watching that. I'm like, there are people today that are like that. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, is it funny or is it problematic? And there's constantly, for years and from years on, there's going to constantly be the discussion of, is it funny or is it problematic? And, you know, even in drag, there are some people that'll ask, well, I'm going to perform this number. Is it wrong that I, as such and such, am doing this number?
Right.
Like, there are so many queens that are like, I want to perform, and I am telling you from Dreamgirls.
Yes.
And there are some people that, I won't perform it now.
Right.
The only time I will sing it, if it comes on the radio, I will sing it,
yeah,
but I will not perform it.
Yeah, you know, I would not have a problem with singing it live.
Yeah.
But I would never, like, lip sync, like, a, you know, somebody else's
It's the same thing with, what was that one number from Hairspray? I Know Where I've Been. That's another one I won't touch.
Yeah, no.
There are just certain characters and certain songs that just a person like me should just not touch because it's not for me. It was not a song that was written for me. It was a song that was written for another type of person. And I feel like the older we get and the more there's an evolution of time and so on and so forth, there'll be more of those conversations where it's like, well, can I? Oh, I can't. Okay, that's fine. And move on. But there are some people that you say that and it's like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay.
True. Yeah.
I do not begrudge you. You take your life and fate into your own hands.
Yeah, I would personally would never tell somebody, oh, you can't do that. I mean, I'm like, whatever somebody decides to do, they make the decision.
Every day you wake up and you make a choice.
Exactly.
And whether you choose violence or not is entirely up to you.
Please don't choose violence.
Please don't choose violence. Please don't choose violence.
Please don't.
But these are all things that sort of happen based off of this one episode.
Yes.
And it's the introductory episode to the character. Mm-hmm. So for all of these things that we've mentioned to sort of be addressed in this one episode, I mean, again, it's like, I will repeat this until my dying day. I am still very saddened that Maude does not do all of that well in syndication. I think you could maybe catch Maude on, like, Cozy TV at, like, 12 in the afternoon or 12 midnight or some of that. You can only... But you see All in the Family all the time. The Jeffersons.
Oh, all over.
Even, like, Good Times. You'll see... what else will you see a lot of in syndication that does well from the 70s?
Oh, from the 70s? The Brady Bunch.
Obviously, the Brady Bunch. I mean, even the Partridge Family you'll see a lot
of. Yeah. A lot of those very vanilla,
Vanilla, not so controversial.
Not controversial, not threatening. I mean, I think the most, biggest, like, issue on the Partridge Family was when they all got sprayed by the skunk and had to take a bath in tomato juice so they didn't stink for their gig.
That's another thing that we'll definitely touch on. That when it came to certain things on Maude, like, there were things that were written that I knew that Bea Arthur wanted to say. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll give you a great example. There was one episode where Arthur wanted Maude to perform, I think, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious for a show. Uh-huh. And Maude was like, why? Why are we doing that? And Arthur's like, oh, well, I love it. It's so fun. It's so fresh. It's so great. And then Maude's like, of course you like it. It thoroughly repels me. And then she ends up saying, Arthur, don't you know that you've said 5 4-letter words? Because, I mean, a 4-letter word back in the 70s was actually a bad 4-letter word.
A curse, yeah.
Like a swear. And it really is one of those things where it's like, I hate vanilla. I can't stand vanilla. I'm always the type of person that, even when it comes to arguments with my own family, I am very liberal. I am very much like this. Me, a liberal? How impossible!
I
couldn't imagine. But I'm also, like, on the internet, I'm very outspoken. If you see me in my house, I'm a totally different person. I'm very quiet. You wouldn't believe it, but I am.
I believe it.
But that's just... And when I was watching Maude, I'm like, this is a woman who is very much in charge of her own destiny. Mm-hmm. She's had 4 husbands. She doesn't give a frick about... One of the things that Norman Lear did was he called Maude and this is Norman Lear's words, a bullshit liberal. Mm-hmm. And what he meant by that was, and it was the same thing with Archie, like, you're taking this really crass, verbose, foul-mouthed individual, and you're making him a likable character.
Right.
He did something very similar with Maude, where he would take this very militant, strong, liberal feminist, but still give her the mentality, not so much the mentality, but give her the morals of a housewife from the 50s, where she would say things and, like, double back on herself. And she would do things and then say, oh, well, no, I didn't mean that.
Right. Well, he humanized
the characters.
Because there are people in everyone's lives that have, like, these views that are, the opposite of yours, but for some reason or another, you're still, you still may be friends with them, or it's family, and you still,
and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of like that. They weren't one note.
Yeah, they were not one note characters. Yeah. They were layers. Yes, like an onion.
Like an onion. Oh,
like an onion. Layered like an onion.
Ooh, onions, I'm getting hungry now.
I can go for a blooming onion. So seldom do I go to Outback Steakhouse. Sponsor us, Outback. Sponsor us.
Oh, we're trying to get this. Oh, I love them. Yes, I eat there every day.
So that is definitely where Maude takes us, really, and it's the same again. The sitcoms of the 70s were very human.
Yes.
Like I look at sitcoms from the 70s and I compare it to Blackish. I compare it to what's another good example of a very, very humanizing television sitcom that isn't so dramatic. That is dramatic, but still has like a lot of humor in it.
I would say Facts of Life.
Facts of Life
that was in the 80s.
That was in the 80s.
That was in the 80s. But when it started, it was very simplistic. But then as it went along, they actually dealt with some serious issues like, premarital sex and even like I remember there was one episode. Sorry, we're going into the Facts of Life.
It's fine. I mean, listen, that one of the beautiful things about Maude is that Maude was in the 70s, and Maude sort of broke the mold for female characters.
Yes.
Like you look at Maude, and then you see all of these other strong, militant female characters that have sort of grown out of that sitcom. Mm-hmm. And like there were a lot of people that felt that she was sort of like Joan of Arc, where she was just this sword and shield carrying like paragon.
Yes.
And we can obviously like compare Maude to the characters in the Facts of Life. We can say that Carol is very much like characters in the Facts of Life. Mm-hmm. We can say that Vivian is even certain characters in the Facts of Life. Mm-hmm. So that's just part of it. We're obviously going to be talking about more than just Maude.
No, but
I mean,
she's our primary focus.
She is the primary focus.
I mean, all springs from Maude.
Exactly.
all springs from Let Us Worship.
But I mean, it's true though. Like we've said, if you looked at any protagonist female character from before the 70s even, you had these very doting, very quiet. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the exception of Alice from the Honeymooners.
Yeah.
With the exception of Alice from the Honeymooners, but even Alice was like still very. She would never call Ralph a son of a bitch.
Oh no.
She would never like be foul mouthed. Right. She would just be shrill.
Yeah.
But Maude was like everything and then some, just screaming at the top of her lungs, like the. One of my friends, Summer Orlando, fabulous drag queen. When we started doing Maude Live, because Summer was my Vivian, we ended up talking about what we wanted to do for the live, like what episodes we wanted to do a staged reading of, and he was like, I'm gonna watch all episodes in the first season because it's readily available and I can watch it. And then we reconvened and he's like, I need headphones because listening to Maude scream so much, it literally affected my hearing.
Oh God.
And it was one of those ones at time where I'm like, that makes sense because throughout most of the first 2 seasons of Maude, Bea Arthur just always was screaming for some reason. She just had this big, booming, theatrical presence, which doesn't make any kind of sense at all.
Oh, no.
Like, if you look at her body of work, it doesn't make any sense at all.
No. And it seemed like Maude came from that sort of lineage of what I think of the big, broad character.
Yes.
From, movies, that she was like direct descendant of that. Those like
very much so.
Not the glamour girl, not the ingenue.
Definitely not the ingenue.
The big broad character that was that
led with their chests. Led with their chests.
Yes.
These women who in fact led with their chests. And I won't say that it's like Divine, because when did Pink Flamingos come out? 74?
Something like that. Yeah, it was
But I mean, even in certain drag characters, like Divine broke the mold in a very similar fashion the way Maude did. Because prior to Divine, drag queens were very like...
They really were more female impersonators.
They were more female impersonators than they were camp queens.
Like, I remember, like years ago, if like somebody was doing drag, they would get asked, "Oh, who do you do?" Meaning, because it was always assumed when you were doing drag, well, you were doing Marilyn Monroe, or you were doing Bette Midler, or you were doing Diana Ross, or it was always, that was sort of it. That if you were doing drag, you were pretty much doing like another character, and it was like with Divine, that was where it was sort of like Divine was Divine. Divine was not doing anyone else.
So it's very similar to it is very similar to someone's getting a phone call. Someone's getting a phone call, and he didn't.
I should have.
She didn't lower her phone.
I can't believe
she
I
didn't
did
mute
that.
her phone.
I can't believe I did that. I don't know who it is.
I'm not speaking
to them.
Welcome to God Will Get You for That, Walter.
God,
the most professional. God
will get me for that.
God will get you for that.
God will get me for that.
So it really is similar. It really truly is similar when you look at Maude, and then to just see the body of work that has led from that sitcom. So for it to not... I feel like I've said this about 4 times. To see it not stay in syndication or do well in syndication is a crock.
It's a crime.
I think it's a crock and a crime.
It's a crime. So let's continue on now with the episode. What ends up happening...
Yes.
Is at the very end.
At the very end,
they're all better.
They're all better, and Maude is the one that's sick.
Yes. And she's still there at the house.
She's still there, and Archie is still unsure of what to do with himself.
Exactly.
And again, it's brilliant writing like that gives the show staying power, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, I loved it because it gave Archie more of a reason to be miserable.
Yes. Well, that was a lot of the theme of All in the Family was always these other characters that were coming in to oppose Archie.
Yes.
And call him out on his views.
That was how they got the Jeffersons.
Yeah.
And again, it was another one of the reasons why Good Times happened, because Maude had Florida. And Florida was a fabulous foil for Maude. Because Florida would put Maude in her place.
Right.
And I feel like that's just what happens. Like, you'll... if you want to be a success in Hollywood, just be a great foil to the lead character.
Of course.
That's all that's needed.
But don't show them up.
But don't never show them up. Because you might get your own sitcom at that point.
That was what happened with, remember Alice, the show Alice with
Alice,
yeah. And Polly Holiday became so popular as Flo.
Yeah.
They had to spin her off. But what happens sometimes is when a character gets spun off, it just does not always work. It doesn't, and the show and her show Flo. Yeah, it didn't work.
Do well.
It didn't do well.
It didn't do well at all.
It really didn't.
And then you look at Mary Tyler Moore and Rhoda.
Right. Yeah.
But Rhoda did well. Rhoda does okay. I'm not going to say it does well like Mary.
You know what happened with Rhoda was like the very first season, like they married her, and it was sort of like, wait, who? This isn't Rhoda. We don't know who this. Rhoda was always this single woman who had such bad luck with dating, and
that for her to marry in the first season.
Her husband Joe, played by David Groh. You see, I remember all this stuff because I watched it. And it was just sort of like
she was there when the dark magic was created.
Exactly. And Phyllis had her own short-lived sitcom too. They spun her off, and again, there was something about when you spin off a character.
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah, sometimes the magic just isn't there. Norman Lear had great luck though, that he was able to spin.
Norman Lear had very good luck with
characters.
his sitcoms, because again, he had, he had All in the Family.
All in the Family. Maude.
Good
Times.
The
Jeffersons. I don't remember what
Different
else.
Strokes.
Oh, he did Different Strokes
I'm pretty sure he did Different Strokes.
Oh, and of course, and Facts of Life was spun off from Different Strokes.
No.
No?
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 Wait.
We have to research.
We have to research that. No, I think it was... Wait, hold on now.
Oh, we're
going to Google this because now I'm curious.
We have to Google this.
I'm very curious. And of course, my phone is not on 4G because why?
Because I didn't give him the Wi-Fi pass. Maid isn't there, and they're supposed to be having these people over, so Blair just starts cooking, and her stuck-up friends are like, what are you doing? And Joe has a sort of a similar instance with her friends where they want to do something that's not quite good
legal.
And
not quite legal
or something, and she's like, no, I'm not doing that, and it's like, and then the two girls both realize that they've sort of they've changed, having because they got thrown together in the second season. They changed up the whole thing, and it was really just concentrating on the four girls and Mrs. Garrett going, girls.
Well, that was honestly one of the reasons why Charlotte Rae left the show,
and Cloris Leachman
came in. The reason why was because Charlotte Rae wasn't the focus. Mrs. Garrett was no longer the focus. It was all about the four girls. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those moments where I'm like, okay, as an older actress...
You take the good, you take the bad. You take them both, and there you have.
The facts of Hollywood. The facts of Hollywood. And it really... But, obviously, we'll talk about this in a later episode. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to Maude.
So much to discuss.
But it was even one of the reasons why Esther Roll and what is his name? Not James McCoy. What is his name? John Amos.
John Amos. Yes.
John Amos. They both left the show because JJ was getting
JJ Walker.
Yeah. And Jimmy Walker. And the same thing happened with Family Matters.
Yes. They were actually just talking about that recently, about, the mother, Jaleel White as Urkel. In the second season, he
controlled everything.
The show went from being about that family.
Went from being about Family Matters to being about Urkel.
And they were
I think it was around the fourth or fifth season that the mother, whose name escapes me, just up and left. She wouldn't come back for the show because it became all about Urkel.
And they even just eliminated one child.
I think they did. You're right. I genuinely think you're right.
Just all of a sudden, just wasn't there anymore.
So we are reaching the end of our show.
Oh my God! Who would have thought that a 26-minute episode
could invoke that much conversation? Oh, just wait. The next episode is going. There's a lot because I'm remembering a lot of things that happened in that episode, but I'm very excited for this adventure. I hope you are too.
I had a lot of fun in our
I did too.
Initial outing of doing.
It's only going to make us closer friends,
of course. Until we stab each other in the back.
It's
that's what drag queens do,
these days. That's why I call myself a female impersonator.
Oh, that was a female you were impersonating?
But if you want to follow us, you can at the God'll Get You for That podcast, which will be posted where?
It'll be in the comments. I'm not really sure. I know it's going to be in as many places as possible. So
most likely,
we're going to get to that.
So just for I'm thinking what's going to happen is we'll do the 2-parters as one episode. Mm-hmm. I think we'll do that. Does that sound serviceable to you?
The 2-parters.
2-parters.
Which 2-parters?
Any 2-parters.
Of Maude?
Of Maude.
Oh, yes. Okay, that makes sense.
Rather than focus on each episode individually, do the 2-parters or even the 3-parters. I think there was one episode that was 3 parts.
Oh, my goodness.
And we can obviously...
We'll work it out.
We'll work it out in editing. But if you would like to follow me, you can at that Tom Catt on all forms of social media, from TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, all of it. I'm there.
It's all good.
It's all there. And if you would like to follow Toni, you can at...
pretty much anything Toni Homeperm. And it's Toni with an I.
Toni with an I.
Toni with an I when I'm doing that.
It's going to be her one-woman show, Toni with an I.
Toni with an I.
I like that. I think it's great.
Oh, I gotta get on the phone with my lawyer now. Oh my God. Toni with an I. Yes.
But thank you so much for listening.
Thank
and
you,
we'll
everyone.
see you on the next God'll Get You for That, Walter.
Yes, we will.